In this video, I'm going to go through another example. So this is example 2 of transforming a square root parent function. So in this case, I'm going to go from f of x is equal to the square root of x, and I'm going to transform it to g of x, which is equal to -3, and this is going to be x plus 2 square root plus 1. Once again, at some point, I'm going to just inform you ahead of time. Make sure you have a pencil, because when we start sketching, you're gonna have to erase certain things. So it's better if you use a pencil if you're taking down notes. Anyways, so the first thing that we want to observe is what are the transformations going from f to g. And like I said before, since it's a parent function, which is the simplest functions, we can pretty much read right off the function itself to see what the transformations are. One other thing that I wanted to say that I forgot to mention in the previous video is that make sure that inside the square root, make sure everything is factored. Just like when we always had to make sure that before we did transformations of just general functions, the inside of the argument or whatever was inside f was always factored, we have to make sure that whatever is inside the square root is also factored. So in this case it is, and so we're good to go. So let's observe what the transformations are. So the first thing is that there's a negative on the outside, which means that there's a reflection over the x-axis, which means that it affects the y's. So it's a reflection over the x-axis, all right? Then second is, okay, so we're done with the reflections. There's no more negatives. The second is, are there any stretches? And clearly we can see that there's a stretch in the y direction by a factor of 3. So stretch in y direction by 3, right? So, and then what we can see is the translations. So is there a translation? So yes, there's a translation. So since we see x plus 2 here, what it means, it's 2 to the left. So it's -2. And since it's plus 1 on the outside of the square root, it's up 1. All right, so now that we know exactly what the transformations are, we can pretty much plot how what g of x looks like. So let's do that. So once again, we have f of x, and then we're going to g of x, and I'm going to use these 3 instructions that we've written down to help us plot it. So f of x is going to look like that, right? And now we're pretty much going to use that to help us determine what g of x looks like. So let me start this way. So anyways, here's, let me do it slightly different. Let me draw some proper axes. There we go. So I'll draw this, I'll draw that. Okay, and here we go. So here's our original function, which is f of x, which is the square root of x. Now first it says it's a reflection over the x-axis. So in other words, if this is our original function, our reflection is going to go down like this. All right, so that's basically, it goes from here to here. We've taken care of this, and we're good to go. And what I'm going to do is, if you have an eraser, erase the old one, so you'll see step by step what's happening. All right, so we're done with that. Next, we're going to stretch in the y direction by 3. So if it's going to stretch in the y's, it's going to stretch down even further. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this even further down. So it's going to be stretched even more because it's stretched in the y direction by 3. I'm going to check that off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to erase the old blue line, because we're going step by step and seeing how all the transformations happen. Finally, it says that it's translated to the left by 2. So if it's translated to the left by 2, I'm going to go to the blue right here. So really all it's done is it's just moved it to the left by -2. And then I'm going to erase the old one, which is the yellow one right here. All right. And then last but not least is we're going to move it up by 1. So if we're moving it up by 1, then it's going to be up 1 here. So it's going to go there. And it's something like that. Oops, it doesn't really look symmetrical. Oops, my mistake there. It doesn't really look symmetrical, so let me do that again. See, it's right there. And all right, it's good enough. And basically, I'm just going to erase the old blue one over there. And what you can see now is that it basically, the coordinates of this point right here are -2 and 1. Or -2 and 1. And that's basically this graph of g of x, which is the transformed function. All right, so I hope that made sense. And then I'll give you, like, I guess maybe a couple of more examples of how to do transformations of the square root of x. See you in the next video.